BZZ. It is now 10:23 a.m. on October 13th, 2030. This may be the station's final broadcast. Shanghu has already fallen and become a no man's land. Do not go there. Do not go there. Listening to the static on the radio, I felt a chill run through my whole body. Shanghu, one of the world's top super cities, a land of hope for tens of millions of people, has now become a forbidden zone for humanity. A few months ago, the Eerie outbreak erupted in full. Conventional weapons were completely useless against the Eerie, and some small countries were wiped out outright. I escaped from Jiangxing and formed a convoy with a group of survivors, originally planning to head all the way to the Shanghu base. But now, the last glimmer of fire had gone out too. The entire convoy was filled with a suffocating sense of despair. Oppressed sobs came from all around, and the eyes that had still held a trace of hope had turned completely ashen. There were only two iron rules in the convoy. First, don't fall behind. Falling behind means death. Second, gather supplies whenever possible. I rode an old 28-inch bicycle mixed in with the convoy. It wasn't that I didn't want to get a car. Without the keys, there was simply no way to start one. Ordinary people simply don't know that movie-style hot wiring trick. As for motorcycles and e-bikes, the reason was the same. This old 28-inch bicycle was also the last one snatched from the bike shed. As night fell, a blood-red moon hung over the treetops, draping the earth in a crimson veil. From the distant towns that had fallen into forbidden zones came faint cries for help. Those were all tricks the Eerie used to lure the living, and no one dared pay them any mind. I set up my camping pot, poured in the last half bottle of mineral water, lit the butane stove, and tossed in a block of instant noodles and a sausage. Blue flames licked the bottom of the pot, and the aroma of instant noodles soon drifted out. This was the last canister of gas. Quite a few survivors around me stared at my pot and swallowed, their eyes greedy. If my other hand hadn't been pressing on the hand crossbow at my waist the whole time, someone probably would have pounced already. As I ate my noodles, I mulled over the future. My mind kept returning to a post I had seen online before the Eerie outbreak. The Eerie cannot be killed. Only those who awaken extraordinary sequences can kill the Eerie. That post also said there were only two ways to awaken an extraordinary sequence. Either awaken suddenly, or inject something called a sequence serum. What exactly that thing was, I had previously treated it as the ravings of a lunatic. After finishing the noodles, I lit the last cigarette, and the glow faintly illuminated the side of my face. I didn't bring myself to throw it away until I could smell the scorched stench from the cigarette, but I dug out a blanket from my pack, planning to make do for the night. The moment my fingertips touched the blanket, a message suddenly popped into my mind. Upgrading blanket requires 129 kill points. Do you wish to upgrade? My whole body froze. It took me a quarter of an hour to figure it out. I hadn't awakened a sequence ability, but an upgrade system. As long as I was willing, any item I touched could be upgraded. The blanket, the hand crossbow, even the butane stove I had just used to cook instant noodles. The only requirement was kill points, but I didn't have a single kill point. Just when I was utterly disappointed, another message surfaced. As this is the host's first time using this system, 300 kill points may be borrowed, with a term of 1 month. I can even borrow? With the apocalypse upon us, whether I'd still be alive tomorrow was anyone's guess. Only a fool wouldn't borrow. I confirmed it directly. With kill points in hand, the first thing I looked at was that old 28-inch bicycle. The convoy's first iron rule was not to fall behind, and this bike was the foundation of my survival. Using it was definitely the most cost-effective choice. With a thought, I said, use all kill points to upgrade the bicycle. Confirm spending 300 kill points to upgrade the bicycle. Confirm. An hourglass countdown appeared above the old 28-inch bicycle. 4 hours 59 minutes and 59 seconds. Before dawn, I was jolted awake by a system prompt. Upgrade complete. By the faint light on the horizon, I saw that my old bicycle had changed dramatically. Its 2 wheels had become 3, the tires were wider with rough off-road treads, and the spokes were obviously much sturdier. There was now a big cargo bed at the back, doubling its carrying capacity outright. When I got on and tried it, it was actually less effort than before. The system had added an assist mechanism. After full daylight broke, the tricycle drew a lot of attention. Everyone around was full of envy, jealousy, and resentment. A woman in yoga pants swayed her hips as she walked over. Her name was Jejia. She was someone we had rescued a few days ago while gathering supplies, and quite a few men had been hovering around her ever since. She had tried to hitch a ride in an off-road vehicle and been refused, so now she had settled for me as her next best target. Brother Ye, let me sit in your cargo bed, okay? My legs really hurt from all this walking these past 2 days. She deliberately rubbed her calf, acting utterly coquettish. No, I didn't even think about it. Jejia's expression instantly turned ugly. Before the apocalypse, she had been considered a pretty little beauty, and no one had ever rejected her so bluntly. Chen Ye, you, Jejia, ride with me. The back seat has a cushion, guaranteed to be comfortable. A burly man immediately spoke up ingratiatingly. His name was Xiangzi. He used to be a fitness coach, but after his motorcycle ran out of gas, he switched to riding a bicycle. Jejia gave a cold snort and sat on Xiangzi's back seat, then lowered her voice and said to him, "Why don't we just snatch Chen Ye's tricycle?" Xiangzi cast a wary glance at the hand crossbow at my waist. Chen Ye isn't easy to mess with. He has a crossbow. Look at how spineless you are. Jejia rolled her eyes at him. The convoy suddenly picked up speed, moving noticeably faster today than yesterday. Luckily, my tricycle had an assist mechanism, so I was still riding with ease. The people beside me on bicycles were already pedaling so hard they were drenched in sweat, especially Xiangzi, carrying Jejia. His back was soaked through. The way Jejia looked at me grew even more hostile. Houses. There are houses up ahead. Someone shouted. Everyone immediately looked up as if they had been injected with adrenaline. Rows of buildings appeared by the roadside. It was a small town. Where there was a town, there were supplies. A lot of people's bags had long since been emptied, and my own reserves were nearly gone as well. After the apocalypse, most towns had become restricted zones. During the day, the weird usually wouldn't appear, so this was the only window to gather supplies. Several modified off-road vehicles accelerated and rushed over first. I also stood up and pedaled the tricycle hard, leaving a whole cluster of bicycles behind me. The town drew closer and closer, when a spine-chilling sense of danger shot from the soles of my feet straight to the top of my head. The archway at the town entrance read, "Welcome to Xinghua Town," its red paint mottled and peeling. Beyond it was a long street, and even though it was broad daylight, it felt as if endless darkness was lurking at the far end. The shop signs along the street were uniformly black with white lettering. Weeds grew everywhere, and the walls were peeling, as if no one had set foot here for decades. A rotten, damp stench hit me head-on. The off-road vehicle charging in front slammed on the brakes with a piercing screech, followed by a chain of braking sounds behind it. The clamor seemed as if someone had hit the mute button. Everyone froze where they stood. The atmosphere was eerie in the extreme. A giant man over 2 meters tall and more than 300 jeans squeezed out of the off-road vehicle. His voice booming like a bell. "Stop dawdling. I'll go first." He charged straight toward the large supermarket deep in the town like a giant elephant. The people in the off-road vehicle cursed and followed after him. An old man driving an elderly scooter got fired up too. A bunch of young people, and you're not even as good as an old man like me. Just wait till this old man comes out and lives it up. Once that provocation was thrown out, quite a few people followed with red eyes, but there were still plenty who hesitated. I didn't follow them charging into the depths. That supermarket was too far inside. If something went wrong, there'd be no way to get out. I set my sights directly on the shops on both sides of the street entrance, places where the sunlight could still reach and where retreat would be quickest. Quite a few people had the same idea as me, but luckily there were enough shops. I headed straight for a tobacco, alcohol, and snack shop. Through the glass door, I could see packs of cigarettes in the counter display and snacks on the shelves. The sight of those cigarettes made me crave them. After smoking for more than 10 years, days without cigarettes were even harder to endure than days without food. The lock on the door had long since rusted away. I gave it a light pull, and the glass door let out an unpleasant creak. With my crossbow raised, I carefully peered inside, making sure there were no strange shadows, then quickly got moving. I first shifted the empty backpack on my back to my front, and with both hands flying, swept the food off the shelves. Spicy strips, instant noodles, jelly, anything I saw went straight in. The shop stock wasn't particularly abundant, and many shelves were empty, but even so, I quickly filled 2/3 of the bag. I pressed it down hard to make more room before turning my attention to the cigarettes in the glass counter. Reason temporarily suppressed the urge. Food came first. But cigarettes were important too. They were hard currency, useful for trading for supplies. My hands moved in a blur, stuffing Tatsi, Huazi, and Hahua into the bag without caring whether they were expensive or cheap. I didn't even spare the reserve stock under the counter. In the end, I also shoved in 2 bottles of liquor. The backpack zipper was practically about to burst open. Just then, a familiar shiver suddenly exploded through me. I'd experienced it several times in Jiangxing. Everyone who survived knew what this feeling meant. A face paler than a dead person's was almost pressed against the back of my head. The back of my neck turned cold in waves, and my hair stood on end. A dank, icy stench flooded my nostrils, like a cold snake crawling up my spine. I turned my head with extreme slowness. It was the face of a 7 or 8-year-old child, extremely close to me. The skin was deathly pale, the blush painted on the cheeks was exaggerated, and both the eyes and mouth curved into eerie arcs, forming a fixed smile. The whole thing looked like a paper effigy child offering, squatting in the darkness like a monkey and staring at me without blinking. Between it and me ran a line where light and dark alternated. On one side was the last of the sunlight, on the other, the utmost cold and eerie darkness. I was scared out of my wits and stumbled into the counter, trying to bolt for the door, only to find that, at some point, someone had jammed the glass door shut from the outside with a wooden stick. Someone was screwing with me. Through the glass door, I saw a man and a woman standing by my tricycle. It was Jie and Xiangzi. They seemed to sense my gaze and turned to look. Jie's smug expression, the moment she clearly saw the pale child in the darkness behind me, turned into utter terror. She hurriedly tugged at Xiangzi, and the two of them ran off without a backward glance. A child's giggle sounded from behind me, close against my eardrum. Moon lady, shine on the coffin bed. Little brother waits for candy and cries his heart out. The voice faded in and out, seeming far away yet near, with a strange tune. My scalp went numb. This was a paper crying child. I'd encountered one once before in Jiangxing. In that nursery rhyme, Moon lady refers to the moon. The coffin bed means a coffin, and in the old days candy was a rare treat used to comfort children after a funeral. This thing was using candy to lure dead children. I suddenly raised my hand and pulled the trigger on the crossbow. A bolt passed straight through the paper crying child's body, as if through a sheet of paper, completely ineffective. I'm done for. The paper crying child paid no attention to the bolt at all. The smile on its pale face widened even more, its black hollow-like eyes curving into crescents as it tilted its head. And in a tone warped with pathological longing, it spoke to me again. Moon lady, shine on the coffin bed. Little brother waits for candy and cries his heart out. Candy, I want candy. Some people had their eyes on the supplies in the shops, while others had their eyes on other people's supplies. While Chen Ye was inside the tobacco, alcohol, and grocery store collecting supplies, someone had long been watching his every move. It was Jia, the woman in yoga pants, and Xiangzi, the fitness coach. The two of them had only one bicycle and one backpack. Even if they risked their lives gathering supplies, they still couldn't compare to Chen Ye's tricycle. So someone started coveting Chen Ye's tricycle. While Chen Ye was inside the shop, the two quietly shut the shop door and even stuck a wooden stick through the door handle. At that time, Chen Ye was frantically sweeping up goods and didn't notice anything happening outside the shop at all. Otherwise, he would have given those two bastards a crossbow bolt long ago. Jia, if we do this, we're probably going to offend Chen Ye for good, Xiangzi said worriedly. You useless thing, are you really that scared of Chen Ye? What a waste of your big build. Jia, the woman in yoga pants, said disdainfully. Isn't this tricycle way better than your bicycle? Besides, he went in to collect supplies himself. If his bicycle gets stolen, how can he blame us? Even if he comes looking for us later, if we deny it, what can he do to us? Besides, whether Chen Ye can even get out is still a question. At this point, the woman in yoga pants even sounded cheerful. If this were before the apocalypse, I wouldn't want this tricycle even if you gave it to me for free. Jia said, both disdainful and delighted. Seeing Jia like this, Xiangzi could only come over and look over the tricycle. The joy of getting this tricycle had already surpassed his fear of Chen Ye. Although Xiangzi knew Chen Ye was not someone to be messed with, Xiangzi stroked the tricycle's handlebar and exclaimed, Chen Ye's luck is really good. This tricycle is no worse than a car. It doesn't need gas or charging. Just then, the sound of a counter being knocked over came. The two quickly turned their heads and saw, through the glass door, a calm face devoid of any emotion. It was Chen Ye. At this moment, Chen Ye looked at the two calmly. Yet beneath that calm face was killing intent, making both of them shudder. Chen Ye stood in the light. While in the darkness, there was faintly a small figure whose form could not be made out. Xiangzi, go now, Jia said in panic. Chen Ye's gaze had startled her. Xiangzi was also unnerved by Chen Ye's gaze. He immediately got onto the tricycle and pedaled while standing, only to find it unexpectedly easy, and quickly left the place. The reason he was so wary of Chen Ye was that, like Chen Ye, he had also escaped from Jiangxing. During the escape, after Chen Ye broke a little thug's arms and legs, he directly threw him to the weirdness chasing behind them, and that was how Chen Ye escaped disaster. It should be known that before that, the little thug had been calling him Brother Chen with great familiarity. So much so that anyone unaware would have thought he was Chen Ye's real younger brother. But Chen Ye threw him to the weirdness without the slightest hesitation. Although that little thug really was no good. While fleeing, he had done plenty of bad things. But Xiangzi still felt Chen Ye shouldn't have done that. Xiangzi knew that although Chen Ye seemed easygoing, sometimes even a bit glib, if he really started fighting, he himself was no match for him. Xiangzi would never forget that scene from back then. Beneath that somewhat refined appearance was definitely not any kind of good gentleman. If Jia Jia hadn't kept egging him on, Xiangzi would never have come to provoke Chen Ye. But Jia Jia had said that as long as he protected her and helped her survive, she would consider being his girlfriend. It was precisely this promise that made Xiangzi think with his lust. And now, when Xiangzi thought of Chen Ye's ruthlessness, he felt some regret again. If only he'd known, he wouldn't have listened to that stupid woman Jia Jia. Chen Ye simply watched his tricycle gradually move away without saying a word. At this moment, the eerie thing hiding in the darkness was the greatest danger. In front of him, however, was a glass door with its handle jammed by a wooden stick. This kind of glass door looks flimsy, but sometimes if you really want to kick it to pieces, it's actually quite hard. But sometimes, with just the lightest touch, the glass door shatters into fragments. I want candy, I want candy. Give me candy. A babbling voice came from behind Chen Ye. Chen Ye could even feel the chill behind him. If he hadn't been standing in the sunlight shining in from outside, making the eerie thing somewhat wary, he would probably already be dead by now. Against an ordinary person, an eerie thing was practically an instant kill. But the sunlight was still slanting westward, and at any moment there might no longer be a place for him to stand. The distance between the man and the eerie thing was less than 1 meter. It wouldn't be long before there wasn't even the slightest bit of sunlight left in the shop, and the entire place would be engulfed in shadow. Chen Ye looked around, but found no handy tools. Gritting his teeth, he lifted his leg and viciously kicked the glass door in front of him. Bang! Earlier, when Chen Ye had pushed the door open, the glass door's hinges had already been creaking noisily. He hadn't paid attention at the time. But now, the glass door shook violently from the kick, teetering on the verge of collapse. Without hesitation, Chen Ye delivered another fierce kick. The glass door fell with a crash, hitting the ground and breaking into shards. Chen Ye rushed straight out of the tobacco, alcohol, and grocery shop. When the sunlight after 4 p.m. shone on Chen Ye, it dispelled the chill on his body. It gave Chen Ye the feeling of having returned to the human world for an instant. He turned back and glanced at the darkness inside the shop. The pale-skinned child just stood there in the darkness, with 2 patches of rouge on its face that looked incomparably eerie, staring fixedly at Chen Ye. Its gaze was full of venom. Moon Lady, shine on the coffin bed. Little brother waits for candy and cries his heart out. By now, Chen Ye was standing entirely in the sunlight and no longer felt much fear toward the eerie thing. After getting his backpack ready, Chen Ye didn't spare it another glance and headed off in the direction of the tricycle. The direction Xiangzi and Jia had ridden the tricycle toward was the large supermarket. Earlier, Chen Ye had worried that going in too deep would be dangerous. But now he had no choice but to go and get his tricycle back. The 4 p.m. sun was still slowly sinking westward. Before the sun set, he had to retrieve his tricycle as quickly as possible. It would be best if he could also gather some supplies. There were more and more shadows on the street. Chen Ye could even feel that within those shadows, pairs of eyes were watching him. Because of the arrival of Chen Ye's group, it seemed that certain things in Xinghua town were also awakening. Jia, I think I just saw Chen Ye come out. Xiangzi said worriedly as he pedaled the tricycle quickly. Jia, the woman in yoga pants, glanced back, then slapped Xiangzi on the back of the head and cursed. Seriously, Xiangzi, you're so much bigger than Chen Ye. So why are you such a coward? So what if he did come out? What? Is he really going to snatch the tricycle back? If he really comes, then fight him and see who's tougher. When the time comes, and there are so many people back there, is he really going to kill you? Even if it's the apocalypse, that doesn't mean people can just kill others whenever they want. Xiangzi made a bitter face. He has never killed anyone. Then what the hell are you afraid of? Xiangzi, honestly, if you're this cowardly, how am I supposed to be your girlfriend in the future? Actually, seeing Xiangzi like this, Jia was also muttering to herself inwardly. When she escaped and joined the convoy, many of the men in it fawned over her, like Xiangzi in front of her, well-built, with regular features, and not very bright. If Chen Ye didn't exist, Xiangzi would definitely have been her best target. But after seeing Chen Ye, Xiangzi somehow seemed to fall a bit short. But Chen Ye had never even given her a proper look. She gave him a chance and wanted to sit on that tricycle, but he refused without the slightest hesitation. This crappy tricycle, before the apocalypse, she wouldn't even have spared it a glance. Now she sensed that Chen Ye seemed to be very afraid of Chen Ye. The woman in yoga pants, Chen Ye, looked down on Chen Ye even more, and she felt even more favorably toward Chen Ye. If that damn man could curry favor with her, it wasn't like she couldn't dump Chen Ye. It wasn't like she couldn't return the tricycle to him. Who told him to always act like he was ignoring me? I'm really angry. Chen Ye, where are we going now? Where else could we go? To the supermarket to gather supplies. Do you want me to starve to death without supplies? When Chen Ye arrived at the mall entrance, he found several vehicles parked in front of the supermarket. There were modified off-road vehicles, sedans, and even a bus. Chen Ye recognized them. They were all vehicles from the convoy. In the apocalypse, maintaining a vehicle is quite troublesome. Whether it's an electric car or a gas-powered one, refueling or recharging is both a troublesome matter. Just now, he had seen two off-road vehicles continue ahead to look for a gas station. After escaping Jiansheng, Chen Ye had seen quite a few luxury cars along the way, many of them the kind of luxury cars you could only see online, yet they had still been abandoned by the roadside. The survivors on the road had also tried to drive these cars away. But reality is very different from the movies. Most of these cars had run out of fuel, stopped by the roadside, and been abandoned. This is also one of the reasons why quite a few people in the convoy were migrating with bicycles, following the group. It is difficult for ordinary people to gather supplies. Chen Ye spotted at a glance that his tricycle was also parked at the entrance of the supermarket. His belongings were still in the cargo bed. When he had emptied out his backpack earlier, he had taken everything out of the backpack, and now it was all scattered in the cargo bed. It seemed that those two nasty pieces of work had also come to the supermarket. This mall looked fairly large, and the sunlight at 4 o'clock cast a faint glow at the entrance of the supermarket, but inside it was pitch black, making it impossible to see the exact situation. So many people had gone in, it should have been lively, or at least there should have been some noise. But now it was quiet in a way that felt somewhat abnormal. Chen Ye made up his mind to look around the entrance and try his luck to see if he could gather some supplies. In a doomsday like this, without at least a bit of adventurous spirit, he would probably have starved long ago. As for that nasty couple, he definitely wouldn't let them leave here alive. But the most important thing right now was still gathering supplies. The convoy's second iron rule: gather as many supplies as possible. In the apocalypse, supplies are everything. He emptied the supplies from the backpack and put it on his back again. Crouching low, Chen Ye slowly approached the supermarket entrance, holding a hand crossbow and vigilantly looking left and right. If there was anything unusual at all, Chen Ye would turn and run. As he went deeper in, Chen Ye quickly discovered there was a problem with his plan. This supermarket was much larger than he had imagined, and the shelves by the entrance were basically all empty. Only some shelves a little farther away still had a few goods left. Not far from Chen Ye, two figures were darting between the shelves, and the two figures kept taking things from the shelves and stuffing them into their bags. Chen Ye raised his hand crossbow a little, but in the end lowered it again. These two were not that nasty couple and had no grudge against him. The two of them can't carry much of these supplies anyway. There's still so much nearby, no need to do something that stupid. Chen Ye slowed his pace and carefully moved deeper into the supermarket. Not far ahead was the food section. Chen Ye hunched over and walked over, only to find there were actually several figures here. When these people saw Chen Ye arrive, they hurriedly made a shushing gesture at him. Before Chen Ye could react, he felt a sudden sensation that made his hair stand on end. That feeling again. Chen Ye saw a young girl prowling between the shelves ahead, murmuring something under her breath. Aside from warehouse-style supermarkets, where the shelves are especially tall, the shelves in a normal supermarket are generally around 2.2 meters high. But half of that girl's body rose above those shelves. From that, the girl was probably over 3 meters tall. It was impossible for a normal person to be that tall. There was only one possibility. This girl was a weirdness. The girl had disheveled hair, making it impossible to see her face clearly. She wore a white dress, and her body swayed like a puppet. This super tall girl was holding a huge pair of scissors. The scissors kept opening and closing in her hands, making a terrifying sound. "Where are you? Where are you? Come out. Let's play together." The girl kept murmuring this sentence, her voice long and eerie, as if she were talking to herself, and also as if she were saying it for some little mice hiding in the darkness. Only then did Chen Ye understand why those people had made a shushing gesture at him just now. A drop of cold sweat slid down Chen Ye's forehead. He had just escaped from the paper-crying child, and now he had run into the white-clothed scissor woman. Chen Ye felt like his heart was about to leap out of his chest. The scissor woman turned past a row of shelves and slowly turned around. Chen Ye also stayed hunched over and slowly avoided the scissor woman's line of sight, moving around to the other side. Only then did Chen Ye realize that there were actually quite a few people in this food section. He didn't spot the woman in yoga pants or Xiangzi, but he did see that burly man here. His huge body trying hard to curl up, looking rather funny, with a somewhat silly expression on his face. And at this moment, that burly man also looked extremely nervous. Seriously? You're this big, and you're afraid of weirdness too? How could you not be afraid of weirdness? The scissor woman seemed to have sensed something and suddenly stopped. The head hidden under her long hair suddenly turned a little toward Chen Ye's side. Beneath the long hair, two scarlet eyes looked this way. Everyone's body instantly froze. It was as if they had been struck by a immobilization spell, and a tense atmosphere spread through the air, cold sweat spreading across their foreheads. Chen Ye could even feel time passing slowly, every second as long as a year. If they were discovered by the scissor woman, everyone, himself included, would die. Fortunately, the scissor woman finally started moving again, mechanically walking forward. Everyone let out a huge sigh of relief, and at the same time began playing hide-and-seek with the scissor woman. Chen Ye thought about it and realized this couldn't go on. Chen Ye quietly took a bucket of beef instant noodles and stuffed it into his bag. Seeing this, the others began to follow suit. Some had brought woven sacks, while others had backpacks. As they all quietly began stuffing things into their bags, their eyes stayed fixed nervously on the scissor woman. Chen Ye followed behind these people. Everyone had survived in the apocalypse until now, so they did not attract the scissor woman's attention. Just as Chen Ye was happily packing things up, he suddenly bumped into the back of the survivor in front of him. Looking up, he saw that everyone had stopped, their eyes full of terror as they stared ahead. A bizarre child of 7 or 8 was standing in front of everyone. Skin as pale as a corpse dead for 3 days, an unnaturally flushed redness on the cheeks, and those venomous eyes. This is the paper-crying child. It chased us here. A scream shattered the silence of the supermarket. That scream awakened certain lurking things in the darkness. The white-clad scissor woman, over 3 meters tall, stiffly turned her head to look this way. A chilling cold instantly swept over them, making Chen Ye's hands and feet go slightly numb. Crack, crack. The sound of scissors echoed through the supermarket. Hee hee, so this is where you are? Want to play together? The scissor woman strode this way, knocking over several shelves. Oh my god. Run, I don't want to die yet. Chen Ye grabbed his backpack and turned to run. Before he could even fully turn around, he saw with his own eyes the 2 survivors in front of him being cut into upper and lower halves by a huge pair of scissors. The 2 survivors seemed not to have reacted yet. Their upper bodies fell to the ground, still crawling and struggling with their hands, leaving a pool of blood on the floor. Hee hee. So nice, so fun. I still want to play? The scissors were raised again. The next second, another survivor in a suit and gold-rimmed glasses was cut in half at the waist too. Damn it, let's do this. A furious roar rang out. The entire supermarket was filled with an explosive aura. Chen Ye watched helplessly as the 2-meter-tall, muscular giant, like an inflating balloon, turned in the blink of an eye into a giant nearly on par with the scissor woman. He was also 3 meters tall, with muscles all over his body like lumps of iron. Compared with the scissor woman, his overall presence was no weaker. This is a sequence transcendent? When escaping from Jiancheng, Chen Ye had heard people mention it before. The bizarre cannot be killed. Only sequence transcendents can contend against the bizarre. Sequence transcendents are humanity's last hope against the bizarre. Along the way, people in the convoy had been saying the same thing. He just hadn't expected that someone in the convoy really was a sequence transcendent. A giant over 2 meters tall already looked very strange among normal people. And now, that giant over 2 meters tall had turned into a muscle demon over 3 meters tall. If this wasn't a sequence transcendent, Chen Ye couldn't think of any other explanation. The 2 giants began fighting in the supermarket's food section. The entire food section instantly became a battlefield. Only then did Chen Ye understand why this sequence transcendent had been so afraid of the woman in white earlier. The demonic muscle man roared as he swung his fist at the white-clad scissor woman. But the white-clad scissor woman easily caught it with one hand. If that punch had landed on a human body, Chen Ye had no doubt it could blast a person into a mist of blood across the sky. But this gaunt white-clad scissor woman, thin as a dried corpse, possessed an incomprehensibly overwhelming strength. The white-clad scissor woman gripped the demonic muscle man's fist as if kneading dough. It was complete domination. Chen Ye stared in dumbfounded shock. This still isn't enough. Pain showed on the demonic muscle man's face, his body bending slightly amid the other side's savage laughter. Chen Ye didn't even know what he had been thinking at the time. He directly raised his hand crossbow and fired an arrow at the white-clad scissor woman. The crossbow bolt shot straight at the white-clad scissor woman's face, hidden behind her long hair. The bolt lodged firmly behind her long hair, but it had no effect at all. The woman in white turned her head slightly to look at Chen Ye. Under the white-clad woman's gaze, Chen Ye felt a shudder run through his whole body. Screw this. The demonic muscle man moved. Another punch slammed fiercely toward the white-clad scissor woman's face, directly driving the crossbow bolt into her face. A message flashed before Chen Ye's eyes. You attacked the eerie white-clad scissor woman. You gained kill points plus 200. He had no time to check the system prompt. In Chen Ye's horrified gaze, this punch from the devil muscle man also failed to cause any harm to the white-clad scissor woman. The white-clad scissor woman's body did not even sway. That slender arm gave a slight shake and casually flung that body over 3 meters tall away, sending it crashing through countless shelves. This is the eerie. The sequence transcendent, known as humanity's miracle, was nothing more than a rag doll before the white-clad scissor woman. In just a few short months, humanity was driven out of the cities and became drifters, able only to live in constant flight. They were the ones who started this disaster. You stinking bitch, I'm going to tear you apart. With a furious roar, a huge body leaped out from the collapsed shelves and charged at the white-clad scissor woman. A faint aura of blood lingered around the surface of the massive body. This vitality also exceeded Chen Ye's expectations. The scales in Chen Ye's heart tilted toward this big idiot once again. Even after all this guy was actually completely fine. Sure enough, a sequence transcendent is still a sequence transcendent. But if this guy still isn't running after all this, there's probably something wrong with his brain. Fine then, if you're not running, I am. Chen Ye had never thought that running away was something shameful. Even someone as strong as Han Laoma would run incredibly fast when facing a powerful enemy. While this big idiot and the white-clad scissor woman were fighting, he would run as far away as possible. As long as he escaped to a place touched by sunlight, the eerie would not dare chase after him. Chen Ye slung on his backpack and sprinted off. Moon Lady, shine on the coffin bed. Little brother waits for candy and cries his heart out. The familiar, eerie, childish voice rang by Chen Ye's ear. Chen Ye felt as if something had grabbed his ankle. Looking down, he saw a pale child with a strange smile looking at you just like that. I want candy, I want candy, the child said with an eerie smile. Chen Ye's steps, however, grew slower and slower. It's over. That was the only thought in Chen Ye's mind. Suddenly, he saw candy scattered all over the messy floor among the shelves. Chen Ye quickly grabbed a few pieces and handed them over. Candy, here's candy for you. The paper-crying child froze, seeming not to have expected that Chen Ye could actually produce candy. It wanted not to take it, but it seemed that some kind of rule forced it to accept Chen Ye's candy. Its pale little hand released Chen Ye's calf and reached out to take the candy. Taking advantage of the moment, the paper-crying child accepted the candy. Chen Ye quickly ran toward the supermarket entrance. All around were survivors crying for their fathers and mothers. Chen Ye glanced back and saw that the paper-crying child was unwrapping the candy. In the distance, that devil muscle man was sent flying again, but soon stood back up and charged at the scissor woman once more. He was just like the unkillable little cockroach in cartoons. It seems this sequence transcendent isn't completely useless after all. He really is quite strong. Or rather, that white-clad scissor woman is very strong. The sense of danger in his heart eased slightly. At least for now, he was safe. Chen Ye swept his gaze around a few times, directly pulled out 2 large bags from the toppled shelves, turned around, and quickly left. The eerie, cold laughter behind him came from time to time. Mixed in was the angry roar of that devil muscle man. He ran in one breath to the supermarket entrance. When Chen Ye stood under the sunlight again, only then did he feel as if he had returned to the human world. And from inside the supermarket still came screams and terrified cries for help. Save me, I don't want to die. No, don't come over. Whoa, eerie shadows loomed all around. Many survivors, while running, were dragged back into the darkness by strange figures. All the eerie beings in the entire Xinhua town had been drawn over by the crowd. A strip of sunlight blocked any possibility of those eerie beings rushing out. The eerie beings that had chased over bared their fangs and claws at Chen Ye from within the darkness. But because the light was too dim, their appearances could not be seen clearly at all. Chen Ye was breathing in great gulps. It felt like his lungs were about to burst. Sweat had soaked his hair, plastering it tightly to his face. Chen Ye plopped down in the cargo bed and casually threw the 2 bags of things he had brought out into the cargo bed as well. If it had been his old bicycle, it probably couldn't have held this much stuff at all. Chen Ye, why are you sitting in our vehicle? Get down. Just then, Chen Ye suddenly heard a woman's rather hostile voice. Chen Ye turned his head and saw Jia, the woman in yoga pants, and Xiangzi, the fitness coach, standing not far away carrying 2 bundles. Only when he saw the side door not far away did Chen Ye suddenly realize. These 2 weren't that stupid after all. They had probably found this side door and entered the supermarket through it. Now they had also come out safely. Pretty lucky. However, from now on, these 2 big bags of things are mine. Chen Ye, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to steal our vehicle? I'm telling you. Chen Ye, don't think we're afraid of you. Get off my vehicle right now, and I'll pretend this never happened. Chen Ye didn't say a word and directly cocked the hand crossbow. Brother Ye, let's talk this out. Let's talk this out. The fitness coach Xiangzi beside her was a little flustered. Xiangzi, why are you such a coward? I don't believe he can do anything to us. Whoosh. Just as Jia, the woman in yoga pants, said this, a crossbow bolt streaked past before their eyes and pierced Xiangzi's throat. Xiangzi's eyes suddenly widened, and the bundle in his hands also fell to the ground. Clutching his neck with both hands, he looked at Chen Ye in disbelief. Blood splattered all over Jia's face. Jia was also stunned, as if someone had cast a freezing spell on her. Her whole body trembled like a leaf, and she didn't dare move at all. A few drops of water appeared on the ground. Perhaps because the apocalypse had come too quickly, only a few months had passed before and after. So, many people had not fully adapted to the laws of survival in the apocalypse. The woman in yoga pants before him was exactly like that. The reason Chen Ye made the first move to kill the fitness coach was simply because, compared with the woman in yoga pants, this strongly built fitness coach posed a greater threat to him. Although his personality was a bit cowardly, if it really came down to a life and death struggle, it was still uncertain who would win and who would lose. A message flashed before Chen Ye's eyes. You shot and killed your enemy. You gained kill value plus 1,000. Chen Ye was slightly stunned, but then, with no time to think, he began cocking the hand crossbow. Chen Ye, you don't. Just as he was about to raise the hand crossbow. With a scream, the woman in yoga pants turned and ran back. Compared with the eerie beings, she felt that the Chen Ye before her was even more terrifying. Just now, he hadn't hesitated at all with that shot. Whoosh. The crossbow bolt nailed into the wall and then fell to the ground. The woman in yoga pants had already screamed and fled back to the supermarket side door. Before Chen Ye could react, he heard the woman's scream come again. Chen Ye, save me, save me. The woman stumbled and ran back again. At this moment, the woman was in tears and snot, all her previous arrogance gone. Her face was filled with terror, and that somewhat attractive face of hers was deathly pale. Behind the woman stood a ragged figure. Just as the woman was about to escape into the sunlight, the ragged figure grabbed her by the hair, dragging the woman into the darkness. Chen Ye, I was wrong. Please, save me. Save me. Chen Ye, I was wrong. I still don't want to die. Please, I can still be useful. I can still be useful. I still want to live. I don't want to die. Chen Ye, I still have children at home. I can't die. Chen Ye, how can you be so heartless? No matter how the woman begged and struggled, the figure behind her still slowly and firmly dragged her back into the darkness. Chen Ye simply watched and slowly backed away, retreating into the sunlight. The woman's pleas had no effect on him at all. It wasn't until the woman completely disappeared into the darkness that only a trail of marks from her struggle was left on the ground. Only then did Chen Ye realize that his whole body was drenched in cold sweat. He threw the 2 bags into the cargo bed. By now, there were already quite a few survivors who had just escaped around them. But no one was willing to stop and say a fair word. These people frantically loaded supplies onto their own vehicles, turned around, and fled. All around was an even more panicked scene of people escaping, and no one paid them any attention at all. Chen Ye got up and pedaled the tricycle away. Before leaving, he didn't forget to pick up those 2 packages and throw them into the vehicle. Ever since the Eerie outbreak began, humanity had never defeated the Eerie. The Eerie cannot be killed. Only sequence transcendence can deal with the Eerie. But everything he had just seen cast a shadow over Chen Ye's heart. That devilishly muscular man just now was undeniably strong, yet he still had no way to deal with the scissor woman. In front of the white-clothed scissor woman, the devilishly muscular man was like a child. Chen Ye pedaled the tricycle quickly toward the town exit. By now, the sun had already completely tilted westward. The shadows cast from both sides of the street had already covered 4/5 of the road in shade. Out of the corner of Chen Ye's eye, he could see countless pitch black, eerie shadows standing within the shade, staring venomously at their group. Everyone was racing against time. A dark figure flashed across the rooftop beside them. Chen Ye only glanced at it and discovered that it was a girl carrying a sword on her back. Like a swordswoman from legend, this girl lightly tapped the advertisements on both sides of the street with the tips of her feet, moving against the flow like a gust of wind, her target being the supermarket behind them where the fighting had broken out. This was another sequence transcendent. How could there be so many sequence transcendents in the convoy? No time to worry about that. By then, Chen Ye had already reached the entrance to the town and rushed through the archway there. Just as Chen Ye and his group had rushed past the town entrance, a large crowd surrounded them. "Brother, what happened? Husband, are you back? Younger brother, where are you?" A large crowd had gathered at the town entrance. Among these people, women made up the majority. There were not many elderly people or children. In the apocalypse, the elderly and children were relatively weaker physically, so when they encountered the eerie, it was hard for them to escape. On the contrary, adult women, whose stamina and physical condition were only a bit worse than adult men's, were more likely to survive. Quite a few people also surrounded Chen Ye and asked questions. Chen Ye did not answer. He merely gripped the hand crossbow warily and squeezed out of the crowd. A man got out of the modified off-road vehicle at the head of the convoy. The man's attire was somewhat strange. He wore a hooded sweatshirt and a pair of loose-cuffed pants, but he had no shoes on his feet. The expression on the man's face was solemn and cold. The man bent down, grabbed a handful of sand from the ground, and tossed it into his mouth to taste it. It was just like a chef sampling a new dish he had made. The man's expression immediately changed, and he said, "Hurry up and go. If we don't leave now, it'll be too late." After he said this, the expressions of the several people gathered around him also changed. They all scrambled and crawled toward their own vehicles, as if some great terror was about to arrive. "What about Nana and Iron Lion?" someone asked. "Don't worry, they'll catch up. Move, stop talking nonsense." The unusual movement of these vehicles was quickly noticed by the other survivors. They're about to leave? Right, it's already past 5 in the afternoon now. It won't be long before it gets dark. So close to the town, once night falls and the horrors in the town come out, everyone in the convoy will die. "No, my husband hasn't come out yet. You can't leave. Please, my younger brother hasn't come out yet. You can't abandon us." Someone panicked and even started trying to stop the convoy. "If you want to die, then wait here. Get lost." The modified off-road vehicle paid no attention at all to others trying to stop it and sped off with one stomp on the gas. Chen Ye's expression also changed as he was just about to pedal his tricycle to follow. A middle-aged woman grabbed Chen Ye's handlebars. "Young man, you can't leave. You have to take us with you. We're old. If you don't take us, we definitely won't survive." Chen Ye frowned, and a trace of annoyance flashed through his eyes. He was extremely disgusted by the middle-aged woman's behavior. Before the apocalypse, these retired aunties' pensions seemed almost higher than his salary. In daily life, they were full of vigor, either dancing in the public square or going to the supermarket to scramble for eggs. And now, relying on her old age, she wanted to sit on the tricycle and make Chen Ye take her along. Get lost. "Young man, do you know what it means to respect the elderly and care for the young?" Bang. Chen Ye directly kicked this old woman, who was throwing her age around, into the ditch at the side. With a hard push, he pedaled the tricycle and chased after the convoy ahead. A burst of cursing came from behind him. It seemed that the apocalypse coming too quickly wasn't a good thing either. Many people, like the woman in yoga pants, had not fully adapted to the rules of the apocalypse. The off-road vehicle in front, no longer moving at its usual leisurely pace, was now going exceptionally fast. The survivors without vehicles quickly fell behind. Fortunately, Chen Ye's tricycle had a power assist device, so even with the cargo bed full of supplies, he could barely keep up. Just then, a bus came swaying out of the town. Chen Ye recognized this bus. It belonged to the convoy. Earlier, the bus had been packed with people. But now, looking through the windows, the bus was much emptier. One survivor tried to stop the bus, but was directly struck and sent flying by it, his fate unknown. The bus chased after the convoy ahead as if its rear end were on fire, with the accelerator floored. Chen Ye also stood up and pedaled his tricycle furiously. After the tricycle passed several bicycles as well, it trailed far behind the motorcycle. At this moment, Chen Ye's desire to upgrade his tricycle into an electric tricycle reached its peak. Maybe it was time to switch to a four-wheeled vehicle. Even if refueling and charging were troublesome, it would still be much better than now. The tricycle was still speeding along the whole way. Thanks to the massive infrastructure construction over the years, the road conditions were fairly good. Even in some bumpy sections, they didn't have much effect on Chen Ye's tricycle. Chen Ye didn't know why the people ahead were rushing forward like mad, but he knew that if he couldn't keep up with the group, he would very likely die tonight. Only today did he learn that there were actually 2 sequence transcendents in the convoy. Perhaps it was because of these sequence transcendents that the convoy had remained safe until now. Huff gasp. Chen Ye was already drenched in sweat, and all his clothes were soaked through. His lungs convulsed violently, as if they had been scorched by fire. If it weren't for the power assist device, he probably would have fallen behind already. But even so, in Chen Ye's field of vision, only a tiny speck of light remained from the convoy ahead. Not far behind came the sound of heavy breathing, clearly several people on bicycles keeping close by. As for those survivors on foot, not a single one was to be seen. No one knew how much time had passed. Chen Ye finally saw that tiny point of light ahead seemed to have stopped. A faint spark of hope ignited in his heart. Half an hour later, Chen Ye finally managed to catch up with the convoy. The people in the vehicles had already gotten out and started pitching tents. Chen Ye even saw a burly man over 2 meters tall being carried to the empty ground nearby. The man's left arm had been severed clean off at the shoulder, and blood had stained the grass red. Beside the burly man stood a girl carrying a sword on her back. There was also a barefoot man. Chen Ye's arrival made these people turn their heads and glance at him, apparently surprised that the first to arrive was someone riding a tricycle. After steadying the tricycle, Chen Ye did a somersault and collapsed straight onto the ground, gasping for breath in great mouthfuls. His chest rose and fell violently with each breath. After about 5 minutes, Chen Ye's breathing finally became a little more even, and he only felt as if his whole body were falling apart. Struggling up from the ground, he leaned against the tricycle's tire and sat up, pulling a huazi from his clothes and lighting it. The firelight illuminated Chen Ye's outline. He slowly exhaled a long stream of smoke, feeling some of the exhaustion in his body carried away by the nicotine. Only then did Chen Ye feel a little better. He brought up the system and discovered that his kill value had actually already reached more than 1,200. Thinking back on how miserable he had been just now, Chen Ye now had only one plan: to swap his tricycle for an electric tricycle. Chen Ye also didn't know whether his current 1,200 plus kill value was really enough. If not for that muscular devilman's assist, he probably wouldn't even have managed to scrape together those 1,000 plus kill value. Only after going through this did Chen Ye realize how precious an electric tricycle was. If the convoy up ahead hadn't stopped, he probably would have been completely left behind by the convoy. In an apocalypse like this, if the convoy left him behind, the only thing waiting for him would be death. Chen Ye was absolutely certain that the convoy's frantic, bedraggled sprint today must have been because they had sensed some kind of danger. Right now, the most important thing was making sure he wouldn't be left behind by the convoy. It would be best to modify it into the kind of tricycle that used both manpower and electricity. Under normal circumstances, when the convoy was moving, he could use manpower. And in emergencies like today, he could use electricity. System, can I design the upgrade plan myself? Chen Ye tried asking the system this question in his mind. To his surprise, the system quickly gave a definite reply. A 3D stereoscopic rendering soon appeared before Chen Ye's eyes. This was the upgrade plan provided by the system. In the system's design plan, the tricycle's 3 wheels were completely changed into vacuum tires. All 3 tires had been changed into 16-inch tires. Even the cargo bed looked much sturdier than before, and its volume was also somewhat larger than before. The handlebars had also been fitted with a throttle and brakes, and there was even a headlight. Chen Ye thought about it. If he ran into rainy weather in the future, without any cover, he would probably get soaked directly by the rain. So Chen Ye directly changed the front into an enclosed design. At the same time, he also changed all 3 tires to off-road solid tires. Compared with vacuum tires, the advantages of solid tires were that they required less maintenance and could also prevent blowouts. They were more suitable for heavy loads. Even though their shock absorption was worse, making the ride bumpier and causing greater impact on the frame, comparatively speaking, solid tires were still more suitable for this apocalypse. After thinking it over, Chen Ye even planned to reinforce the frame as well. In the system, all it took was a single thought from Chen Ye, and the system could complete every plan according to his design. It was even more comprehensive than Chen Ye had imagined. The system would even proactively optimize some unreasonable plans. The system's original design was a 2-wheel rear drive plan. After thinking it over, Chen Ye directly changed it to a 3-wheel drive setup. In an apocalypse like this, although 3-wheel drive can't compare to 4-wheel drive, It is definitely much better than rear-wheel drive. Chen Ye even modified the vehicle's main frame. He directly changed it to a body-on-frame chassis. You should know that a typical body-on-frame chassis is usually only used on hardcore off-road vehicles. Its advantages are that it is suitable for rock crawling, deserts, and crossing uninhabited areas. For an apocalypse like the current one, these functions are simply more fitting than ever. After a round of modifications, the design drawing in front of him had absolutely nothing to do with the previous three-wheeled bicycle. It looked like an entirely different kind of vehicle. If there really were such an apocalypse tricycle, it probably wouldn't be much worse than those modified off-road vehicles. Chen Ye directly clicked confirm. The 3D model before his eyes blurred for a moment. A line of information prompt appeared before Chen Ye's eyes. Reasonably optimizing based on the current plan. Optimizing. Upgrading the electric tricycle requires 3,500 kill points. Insufficient kill points. The upgrade plan cannot be completed. What? Damn. 3,500 kill points. That many? That's way too outrageous. Chen Ye was dumbfounded. He himself only had a little over 1,200 kill points right now. But looking at the tricycle he had designed in front of him, he was practically drooling. If he really had to give it up like this, Chen Ye was unwilling to accept it. Chen Ye lit a cigarette and thought it over, then had no choice but to revise the original design plan. He first removed some functions that were temporarily unnecessary at the moment, keeping only those that were urgently needed right now. He even canceled the headlights. The goal was to save kill points. A few minutes later, looking at the simplified modification plan in front of him, Chen Ye felt somewhat unwilling. But this was the only way. According to the current upgrade plan, 1,200 kill points are required, and the upgrade will take 15 hours. Do you want to upgrade? He currently only had a little over 1,200 kill points. 15 hours was still acceptable. Just as Chen Ye was about to click confirm, his gaze swept over the roadside not far away, where he saw an abandoned motorcycle parked there, and his eyes suddenly lit up. That motorcycle lay by the roadside just like that, covered in rust, and even moss had grown thick in its crevices. A situation like this could be seen everywhere in the apocalypse. If Chen Ye had enough luck and patience, he might even be able to directly find an off-road vehicle. Perhaps then Chen Ye wouldn't have to upgrade only the tricycle in front of him. But in reality, that wasn't possible. The only asset Chen Ye could use was the tricycle in front of him. If he didn't make use of the upgrade system quickly, he probably wouldn't survive more than a few days. System, if I can get the parts, can some of the kill points be waived? The system quickly gave a reply. If suitable parts are found, the system can waive part of the kill points as appropriate. Chen Ye suppressed his excitement and trembling hands, lit a cigarette, and slightly calmed the turmoil in his heart. The firelight faintly illuminated Chen Ye's profile, making his eyes look bright and sparkling. Damn it, let's do it. Chen Ye struggled to get up from the ground, feeling weak and limp all over. He dragged the motorcycle by the roadside over to the tricycle. The people not far away heard the noise and glanced over at Chen Ye, then immediately turned their heads away. They simply did not care what an ordinary person like Chen Ye was doing. The people over there had already started setting up tents. They even began making a fire to grill meat. The aroma of the meat drifted to Chen Ye's nose, and he felt his mouth watering wildly. Chen Ye could only take 2 hard drags on his cigarette, force down his hunger, and focus his attention on the system modification. System, can the motorcycle in front of me be used for modification? The motorcycle's tires and engine, and even many of its parts, can all be used for modification. Yes, the current modification requires 900 kill points. Only saved 300 killing points. That's way too little to be worth it. System, is there any other way to save some killing points? Yes. If the host can dismantle all the parts of the motorcycle and preliminarily install them onto the tricycle, 100 killing points can be saved. If the host can find a third tire, another 100 killing points can be saved. If the host. Chen Ye understood. The higher the completion level of the upgrade target, the more killing points could be saved. Chen Ye had no tools on hand right now, so this was all he could do. It seemed that when he went out to gather supplies in the future, he would also need to collect a set of tools. Originally, Chen Ye had wanted to see whether there were any other abandoned motorcycles by the roadside. But because it was too dark, he simply couldn't see far away. So this was the best he could do. The original electric tricycle, after being modified by the system like this, had also become gasoline-powered. There was no helping it. It seemed that when searching for supplies in the future, he would also have to follow the convoy to look for gasoline. Fortunately, his tricycle had 2 driving modes. One was human-powered, and the other was engine-powered. It was just that after the modification, riding it probably wouldn't be as easy as before. After clicking confirm in the system, Chen Ye saw an hourglass countdown appear on his tricycle. The upgrade would take 6 hours to complete, saving 9 hours compared to the previous 15 hours. At this rate, the modification would be completed by tomorrow morning. Only then did Chen Ye have time to look at the supplies he had collected. When he came out of the supermarket, he had taken 2 large bags. The other 2 bags had been snatched from the woman in yoga pants and xiangzi. Chen Ye first opened the 2 bags he had brought out from the supermarket. The cigarette in his mouth had already gone out, and Chen Ye casually flicked it away. It was already the apocalypse now. No one would criticize Chen Ye for littering a cigarette, but he lit another cigarette and savored the rich aroma of nicotine. More than half of his backpack was filled with cigarettes, so he definitely wouldn't run short of smokes anytime soon. So Chen Ye was being a bit extravagant for once. Just then, Chen Ye noticed a disturbance coming from the darkness. He looked warily toward the pitch-black direction, only to see a group of people huffing and puffing as they came close. We're finally here. Oh my god, I almost died. Whoa, those monsters, they're not chasing us anymore. We survived, whoa, they're catching up. From these people's tone, it seemed they had also been hunted by monsters. The camp fell into an uproar for a short while. Some were crying with their heads in their hands. Some had collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath. Some remained silent, not saying a word. There were also people casting venomous looks at the group driving in front. Even Chen Ye, who was riding a tricycle, was resented by these people, who kept sweeping venomous gazes over him. Chen Ye placed the hand crossbow by his side and looked at these people with a warning in his eyes. These people were miserable. Some of them even had bloodstains on them. But their plight was not caused by him, and he had no interest in playing the saint. The previous convoy had probably consisted of around 200 people. And now, even with this group that had caught up, the entire convoy probably had fewer than 100 people left. This was the apocalypse. Chen Ye moved his tricycle a little closer to the group of people with cars, putting a bit more distance between himself and this group full of resentment, and only then did he finally have time to sort through his current haul. Opening one of the bags, he found it was actually filled to the brim with rice. Seeing this bag of rice, Chen Ye couldn't help swallowing. It had been quite a few days since he had eaten rice. When he opened the other bag, it was packed full of all kinds of snacks. There were potato chips, instant noodles, spicy strips, and chocolate. There were even several bottles of drinks and mineral water. It looked just like a big snack gift pack. That brought a slight look of delight to Chen Ye's face. Those drinks could quickly replenish sugar, and the empty bottles were also very useful, since they could be used to hold water. After tidying up these supplies, packing them into bags, and hiding them away, Chen Ye finally began sorting through the loot from the woman in yoga pants and xiangzi. When he opened the woman in yoga pants bag, Chen Ye couldn't help but curse out loud. There really wasn't much food in that stupid woman's bag. Instead, it contained quite a lot of clothes and shoes. That would have been fine. At a time like this, any supplies were useful. But all of those clothes and shoes were women's items. There were also quite a few feminine hygiene products in the bag. It looked like these things could only be used to trade with other people for supplies. Next was Xiangzi's bag. Xiangzi's bag was even bigger than Chen Ye's backpack, and it looked like it held quite a lot. Chen Ye even found cured meat in Xiangzi's bag. That was a scarce supply. There was no shortage of all kinds of snacks either. There were also 2 big packs of dried noodles. Just those 2 big packs of dried noodles alone would be enough for Chen Ye to eat for quite a while. Not only that, Chen Ye even found several pieces of clothing and a pair of shoes in Xiangzi's backpack. That made a flash of surprise pass across Chen Ye's face. After all, it was still only October. The weather hadn't completely turned cool yet. So Chen Ye was still sweating a lot every day, and his body had long since become sticky and grimy. The clothes on him were filthy too, making him look little different from a beggar. Even if he couldn't take a bath, changing into a clean set of clothes would feel much better. Chen Ye impatiently changed into a quick dry shirt, found a bag to pack away his dirty clothes, and could only wait until camping by a river sometime later to wash them. In times like these, not even the tiniest bit of supplies could be wasted. Even though the shoes on Chen Ye's feet already smelled sour, he had no intention of throwing them away. Taking out the portable gas stove and cookware, Chen Ye prepared to make himself a good meal today. Without a knife, Chen Ye could only laboriously use the tip of a crossbow bolt to cut off a bit of cured meat and toss it into the pot. As for washing the rice, it never even crossed Chen Ye's mind. After all, washing rice would waste water too. He directly poured in a little water and threw it onto the portable gas stove together with the cured meat to boil. There were also 2 bottles of Laogan Ma in Xiangzi's bag. Having 2 bottles of Laogan Ma was truly one of life's great blessings. The survivors who had arrived not far away were still crying, but Chen Ye couldn't be bothered with them. In an apocalypse like this, people who could still shed tears were the ones who could survive. Exhaling a ring of smoke, Chen Ye leaned against the tricycle and waited for the meal to cook. At the same time, he kept a wary eye on those people. After seeing that they had no extreme reactions, Chen Ye began thinking about the system again. There were still more than 5 hours left before the tricycle's upgrade would be complete. Seeing that he still had 300 kill points left, Chen Ye thought again of those sequence transcendence. System, how can one awaken sequence transcendence? Chen Ye only asked tentatively, but he didn't expect the system to reply so quickly. At present, there are 2 ways to awaken sequence transcendence. One is to obtain a sequence injection and use it to awaken sequence transcendence. The other is self-awakening. Chen Ye narrowed his eyes slightly. As for something like a sequence injection, there was no point even thinking about it. It sounded valuable the moment you heard about it, and there was no way he could afford it. Besides, this was the apocalypse now, and humanity had long since been driven out of the cities, so sequence injections were probably even harder to obtain. And the other way was self-awakening. System, is there a method for self-awakening? Yes. It requires 3,000 kill points to exchange. Would the host like to exchange for it? Chen Ye. 3,000 kill points? Getting 1,000 kill points had almost gotten him killed. Where was he supposed to get 3,000? Looking at the 300 kill points left in his account. If I repay the system loan, I'll be left with nothing. Anyway, the system won't come collecting. So how can these 300 kill points be used to maximize the benefits? Taking a deep drag of his cigarette, Chen Ye's mind was racing. He recalled what happened earlier in Xinghua town, whether it was facing the white-clothed scissor woman or dealing with the crying paper child. Ordinary people had absolutely no way to deal with the Eerie. They could only keep running for their lives. System, use 300 kill points to exchange for a way to deal with the Eerie. After Chen Ye issued this command, a little spinning icon appeared in the system. It was just like the waiting icon when a phone is opening an app. He waited a full 10 minutes. Just when Chen Ye thought the system had no solution either, a message came from the system. Consume 300 kill points to exchange for a plan to deal with the Eerie. Exchange? There really was a way. Chen Ye immediately sat up straight. Confirm, exchange. That feeling of being utterly powerless against the Eerie was truly unbearable. Although the method exchanged for 300 kill points was definitely not some one-shot solution, at least he would have the ability to fight back in the future. The 300 kill points in his account vanished directly. A message appeared before Chen Ye. Black dog blood can have a certain effect on the Eerie. Black dog blood. He hadn't expected it to be this method, and Chen Ye felt a slight surge of joy. He had been worrying before that if the tricycle was upgraded, what would he do if there was no gasoline? If he used this method to trade with those sequence transcendents from earlier, he wondered if he could get gasoline in exchange. Gasoline? Since sequence injectors could be exchanged, then gasoline or other supplies should be exchangeable too, right? Chen Ye directly called up the system to ask. The system gave an affirmative reply. But when Chen Ye looked at the exchange price, he fell silent. Seeing this exchange price, Chen Ye felt that unless his life was in danger, he would absolutely never make the exchange. When the sky was just beginning to brighten, an information prompt flashed before Chen Ye's eyes. The upgrade has been completed. After a faint flash of dim light passed over Chen Ye's tricycle, the entire vehicle became completely different. This 2- or 3-wheeled bicycle no longer looked like a bicycle at all, but more like a motorized tricycle. The front half of the vehicle was the motorcycle Chen Ye had found by the roadside last night. The handlebars, the seat cushion, and that rounded fuel tank. If you didn't look at the rear part, this was a motorcycle. The cargo bed at the back had also undergone major changes. For example, the side guardrails around the bed had been raised somewhat. If the last panel at the back of the cargo bed was laid flat and a cushion added, it could even be used as a bed for resting. In the future, Chen Ye wouldn't need to rest on the ground at night and could sleep directly in the vehicle. The load capacity of the entire cargo bed had been enhanced once again, although it was still far from the complete version previously designed in the system. Under the current conditions, being able to achieve this level was already very rare indeed. Of course, there were still shortcomings. For example, the tricycle's tires. The front tire used the tire from that motorcycle, while the 2 rear tires were still bicycle tires. This was also a compromise made to save some kill points. Also, the front part had no canopy, so whether it was windy or rainy, things would probably be uncomfortable in the future. Even the tricycle's main frame had not been reinforced. It was still rear-wheel drive and had not been made into 3-wheel drive, so it might be troublesome on rough road sections. But achieving this much with only 900 kill points was still worth it. Chen Ye got on the vehicle to try it out. In human-powered mode, even with a labor-saving device, it was much more strenuous than before. If he couldn't get gasoline, this vehicle was probably not as useful as it used to be. At this point, Chen Ye's way of thinking had already changed. If he ran into a situation like yesterday's again, he would probably be left behind by the convoy right away. Being left behind by the convoy had only one outcome: death. This motorcycle's engine might be underpowered, and it might not be fast enough, but it was still much faster than riding a bicycle himself. Even if refueling was troublesome, he'd accept it. Chen Ye looked toward the front of the convoy. There were 2 off-road vehicles, a sedan, and a bus there. They surely had gasoline. With so many supplies on hand now, maybe he could trade with them for some. Very soon, Chen Ye's motorized tricycle drew a lot of attention. Quite a few people looked over with envy. Some even had eyes full of mockery. His old bicycle was so good before, and now he'd changed it into this weird hybrid thing. What a pain. He'll have to collect gasoline from now on too. Yeah, his old bicycle was so good before. How about we go ask him where his previous cargo tricycle went? If we could get it. Ha ha ha. Don't you realize this vehicle was modified from that cargo tricycle? No, don't you think something's off? What do you mean? This guy turned a cargo tricycle into this overnight? This. How is that possible? Hiss. Once someone pointed it out, everyone turned to look at Chen Ye. Exactly. How could a normal person possibly turn a tricycle into this overnight? To modify a tricycle into this, it'd take at least several people and several days. But he finished it alone in one night? How is that possible? Could it be this guy is one of the uncanny? Everyone looked at Chen Ye with wary eyes. There was hatred, wariness, and fear, yet not a single person stepped forward. Among them were people who had seen Chen Ye shoot Xiangzi outside the supermarket yesterday. Seeing their reactions, Chen Ye's heart sank and a bad premonition rose within him. The commotion here drew attention. What happened over here? At that moment, a crisp voice rang out. A long-legged girl with a high ponytail walked over. On her feet was a pair of A-cones, and she was wearing hot pants, while on her upper body was a short cartoon t-shirt with a long sword hanging at her waist. Chen Ye recognized her. Earlier, when they escaped from Xinghua village, it was this girl leaping between rooftops. Her movements as if she could really run along walls and fly over eaves. This was a sequence transcendent. Although the other survivors didn't quite understand what her identity was, for some reason, they still looked at the girl with some fear. The girl looked around, then let her gaze fall on Chen Ye, and finally on Chen Ye's motorized tricycle. When the girl saw the motorized tricycle, a strange gleam flashed through her eyes. Chen Ye reached a hand toward his hand crossbow. Although he knew he might not necessarily be a match for the girl before him, there was no way he would just surrender without resistance. This motorcycle is yours? The girl asked, her voice very pleasant. It's mine. Impressive. Yesterday you had a pedal tricycle, and now you've switched to a motorcycle. Really impressive. Did you awaken as a sequence transcendent? The girl turned around, her eyes sparkling as she looked at Chen Ye. As soon as she said that, Chen Ye was stunned at first. What's sequence transcendent? Is she talking about me? The surrounding survivors erupted even more. Some had heard legends about sequence transcendence before, but had never seen one. But after yesterday, no one thought sequence transcendence were just a legend anymore. And now, everyone heard this girl say that Chen Ye had actually awakened as a sequence transcendent. How could that be? The looks of disdain from before instantly turned into envy and jealousy. The mechanic sequence? Otherwise, you couldn't possibly have achieved this. Forget it, come with me first. After speaking, the girl led Chen Ye toward the vehicles up ahead. Chen Ye understood now. This girl had probably mistaken the system for his own sequence ability. Seeing the girl leading the way ahead, Chen Ye said nothing and followed her forward. This left behind a group of drooling survivors full of envy. This convoy had 2 very serious class divisions. One was the group of people driving in front. According to Chen Ye's guess, there were at least 2 sequence transcendents among them. There weren't many people in this group, only about a few dozen. After yesterday's incident in Xinghua town, they had lost nearly half of their number. The clothes they wore and their mental state were much better than those of the other group. Chen Ye even heard that there was a celebrity among them. The other group consisted of survivors riding bicycles or following on foot behind these people. Judging from what happened yesterday, these were the kind who could be abandoned at any time. Seeing the girl bring Chen Ye over, everyone cast surprised looks their way. Chen Ye even saw a barefoot young man with a very distinctive temperament looking at him. There was no helping it. The other party's temperament was just too distinctive. Nana, this person just awakened the mechanic sequence. After the girl said this, everyone present looked at Chen Ye with either shock or envy. The mechanic sequence? Really? Hissed, so envious. This is the fourth sequence transcendent in our team. There are really more and more sequence transcendents in our team. For sequence transcendents? Then that means there is one more sequence transcendent. Who is it? That barefoot young man just now. The girl tossed her head, signaling toward the motorcycle tricycle not far from Chen Ye, her chin raised high. She seemed very pleased with herself for having discovered a sequence transcendent. Captain, you should all remember this vehicle. What was it like last night? What is it like now? Only a transcendent of the mechanic sequence could achieve this kind of result. So, isn't it great for our team to have an extra mechanic sequence? After the girl finished speaking, she gave Chen Ye's shoulder a hearty pat. Everyone's eyes moved back and forth between Chen Ye and that motorcycle tricycle. Quite a few people cast astonished looks over. The women's eyes sparkled, while the men's eyes were full of jealousy and envy. This was the legendary sequence transcendent. The survivors had long since heard of sequence transcendence, and earlier they had even personally witnessed the abilities of a sequence transcendent in Xinghua Town. If they could obtain the protection of a sequence transcendent, just thinking about it made many people's eyes light up. The mechanic sequence? It should be a type of transcendent related to machinery. Now that he had an upgrade system himself, it did resemble it somewhat. Welcome to awakening as a sequence transcendent. This will be a brand new world. The barefoot man with the distinctive temperament stood up and extended a hand to Chen Ye, his face bright with a sunny smile. From this moment on, Chen Ye felt that the door to the world of sequence transcendence seemed to have opened halfway for him. A wisp of steam curled up from the teacup. Since the apocalypse began, this was Chen Ye's first time drinking tea. Tea he had never liked before now gave off a refreshing fragrance that penetrated to the heart. At this time, Chen Ye was invited into the tent. Inside the tent were only Chen Ye, Chu Che, and Nana. Let me introduce myself. Chu Che, Guide Sequence. Nana, Sword Immortal Sequence. Chen Ye, Mechanic Sequence. Since it was confirmed that I am of the Mechanic Sequence, then I'll do my best to be a transcendent of the mechanic sequence. There's one more you should have seen, the big guy. He's of the Titan sequence, and he's resting right now. You should have just awakened the mechanic sequence, right? As a newly advanced sequence transcendent, you must have many questions you want to ask. Back then, I was just like you. Having just advanced to a sequence transcendent, I was also completely at a loss. If you have any questions, you can ask me. Chen Ye thought for a moment, then said, what is the mechanic sequence? Chu Che glanced at Chen Ye in surprise. Logically speaking, every newly awakened sequence transcendent should obtain some basic information from their genes. But why does this person in front of me seem to know nothing? Chu Che still suppressed the suspicion in his heart, picked up his cup and took a sip of tea, then said, from what I know, the mechanic sequence has a talent for any machinery that ordinary people find hard to comprehend. They have an innate intuition for the operation and principles of machinery. The mechanic sequence can also be considered a type of support sequence. If it were in times of peace, the mechanic sequence would be one of the most ideal sequences. What a pity. Only after Chu Che's explanation did Chen Ye better understand these so-called sequence transcendents. Listening to Chu Che's explanation, Chen Ye truly realized how vast and complex the sequence transcendents were. There are over 100 kinds of sequence transcendents. Even Chu Che only knows of a few kinds. There are still a large number of sequence transcendents in an unknown state. After all, the apocalypse has only lasted a few months. Every sequence transcendent has their own unique abilities. Among them, there are many major categories. For example, combat sequences, support sequences, supernatural sequences, and even each country has its own unique sequences. Xia has the Sword Immortal sequence, the Celestial Master sequence, and so on. The island nation has the Ninja sequence, the Shikigami sequence. The girl beside him, Nana, is one of Xia's unique Sword Immortal sequence and is naturally especially gifted with the sword. In fact, strange outbreaks had already begun in 2025. At first, they were not particularly severe, so the governments of various countries were still barely able to hold on. By that time, some people had already begun awakening as sequence transcendents. Chu Che calmly spoke of the information he knew. Much of it was information Chen Ye had never heard before. So Chen Ye listened with exceptional attention. The uncanny cannot be killed. Only sequence transcendents can deal with the uncanny. But as you have seen, in the face of the uncanny, sequence transcendents can only have some effect. To kill the uncanny, low-level sequences find it difficult, or even completely impossible. The white-clothed scissor woman in Xinghua Town was merely not considered particularly powerful among all the uncanny. But even so, Taisher and Nana, working together, could only save their own lives. Taisher lost an arm just to stay alive. Humanity's sequence transcendents are still far too weak in the face of the uncanny. Moreover, the uncanny are still continuously growing stronger. Humanity's future is very bleak. Che spoke in a very orderly way and very slowly. But the more Chen Ye listened, the heavier his mood became. Just the uncanny that already exist have caused human society to collapse and turn megacities into forbidden zones for humanity. And these uncanny are still evolving, becoming even more powerful. Does humanity still have hope? Human cities have become uncanny nests, forbidden zones for humanity. At the same time, Che also answered a question Chen Ye had always been curious about. The convoy had remained relatively safe for so long. The reason for all this was Che's sequence. Che is of the guide sequence. This sequence has no offensive power at all, but transcendents of this sequence possess a special ability. He can sense uncanny auras within a certain range, and from that, find a safe route. This is also why the convoy had never been attacked by the uncanny on the road. At the same time, the uncanny are attracted to people, and the more people there are in the convoy, the more it attracts the uncanny. Therefore, only by constantly moving and avoiding the pursuit of the uncanny can they survive. This is also why the convoy has always been on the road. The migration in the apocalypse has no destination. Staying alive is the only goal. Chen Ye, you are now the fourth sequence transcendent in our convoy. With you joining us, our convoy will be even more secure. Welcome aboard. Che smiled at Chen Ye. The young sword immortal Nana also looked at Chen Ye with a pair of bright eyes. Chen Ye shrugged. What else could he do but join? Do I have any other choice? Chen Ye reached out and shook hands with Che. By the way, Captain Chu, I wonder if our team has any gasoline? We do have gasoline, but I wonder what you're offering in exchange, brother? In our convoy, all the supplies you need have to be gathered by yourself or traded with others. Trade? No, I'm already a sequence transcendent, and I still have to trade? Don't sequence transcendents get any benefits at all? You just welcomed me aboard a moment ago, didn't you? How about we hold an internal trading fair? We just came out of Xinghua town, so everyone must have a lot of supplies on hand. We can exchange what we have for what we need. Che winked at Chen Ye. As long as you can afford the price, you can trade for anything you want. Hearing this news, Chen Ye couldn't help but start thinking. An internal trading fair? Maybe he could trade for the supplies he needed to upgrade his tricycle. Thinking of this, Chen Ye couldn't help but feel excited.